Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Matters That Matter. I'm Simran, and I'm in a conversation with my mentor, Suzy Singh. Suzy, today I want to discuss forgiveness with you. It's a recommendation to everyone, but I feel like there's a huge gap between its implementation and theory. So, can you briefly explain to us what is forgiveness?
So, very simply stated, Simran, forgiveness is making peace with something that happened in your past, something that caused you a lot of pain. There may have been shame involved, there may have been hurt, there may have been certain offenses against you that may have been committed. Now, that is in the past, but you continue to hurt even into your present. And learning how to give up that suffering, learning how to make peace with whatever happened in your past that you are hurting about, that is forgiveness. Now, very
Right.
often what happens is that people believe that they must hold on to forgiveness because it gives them some kind of unspecified power. They feel that if they forgive the other person, they will lose that power, not realizing that the forgiveness is actually hurting them. And forgiveness merely involves the end of that hurt or the end of that pain. It's a very internal and personal process and does not have anything to do with the offender. It doesn't mean that you need to go to the offender and do a formal I forgive you kind of declaration. It simply means that you're not willing to bear this pain, this suffering any longer.
So, like you said, forgiveness can make people feel very vulnerable. And there are a lot of misconceptions about forgiveness. For example, a few days back, I was struggling with this question that if I forgive somebody from my past, does it mean that I have to engage with them again? Does it mean that I have to let them back into my life? And if I don't, if I just forgive them from a distance, is it still forgiveness? So, what are certain popular misconceptions that people have about forgiveness that makes them not forgive?
So the first thing is there to understand, have I truly forgiven? Because a lot of times people feel that, oh, I have spent the last 5 years forgiving this person and I'm complete and I'm done with it. And yet when we get into therapy with them, we discover that there is deep-seated angst against those people and there is still hidden anger against them. So what are the two ways of testing whether you have actually forgiven someone? Is when you bring their face into your mind's eye, or when you think about those people, do you still feel a lot of negative feelings arising inside of you? And if that's happening, then your forgiveness is not complete. And the second aspect is avoidance. If you still want to avoid them, or if you get nervous, or if you get uncomfortable about encountering them, even if it means that you run into them in a marketplace and you freeze, or you become awkward and you don't know what to do, all of these indicate that your forgiveness is not complete.
Right.
So to answer your specific question, if you still want to avoid the person, then your forgiveness is not complete. But it does not mean that you need to go back and restore your relationship with them. It does not mean that you need to be on the same terms with them as you were before that particular offense occurred. It simply means you were to happen to meet them. Let's say that you've been invited to a party and they happen to share the same room with you. You will not want to run out from the first door you find. That's all it means. You can be comfortable sharing the same space with them in a formal situation, or if you just happen to run into them.
Right. So, what I'm getting from this is that if your memories still hold emotional content, it is then that you have not processed them fully and your forgiveness is not complete.
If there is a negative emotional charge,
Right.
if that pops up for you when you think about that person, or if you see their face, or use a photograph, or any remembrance of that person's name or image, or somebody mentions them, and if it creates discomfort inside of you, then clearly your forgiveness is still incomplete. You're still hurting. You haven't had the time to process your own internal feelings completely. That's what it means. And there are a whole host of other issues too, which is sometimes people believe. For example, let's say that a lady's husband has been involved in an extramarital affair, and she wants to know, now, what should I do? Should I forgive him? And what will forgiveness mean? Does it mean that what he did was okay?
Yeah.
Forgiving the individual does not mean that you are pardoning that act that he performed. His betrayal is not okay. But a lot of people have this misconception, and they hold on to their unforgiveness because they believe that if I forgive this person, he is going to end up thinking that I'm okay with his having strayed and that he's going to stray again. Right. So it's important that when we are working through the forgiveness, first is, like I said, forgiveness is personal. It's intimate to us. It is to stop us from feeling, from not feeling the pain of that betrayal anymore. And then it comes down to the reconciliation process. And it also doesn't mean that you need to reconcile and go back to being with them the way you were before he had that extramarital affair. It simply means that having forgiven him in your heart, you are not going to be shedding tears anymore about that incident, and you may even be speaking to him normally, but your relationship may have undergone a change. Maybe you don't feel for him the way that you felt before. Right. And that really depends on the relationship between the two and how that progresses. It could lead to reconciliation if the husband is truly and genuinely apologetic for having committed the error. If he is seemingly making huge changes and efforts to correct it and is committed to rebuilding the relationship, then you may consider a reconciliation on your terms. But it's not mandatory. Forgiveness plus reconciliation don't go hand in hand. They are not evens. You see, they're two separate things. Forgiving the act is very different from choosing to reconcile and go back into the relationship. You could forgive and move on to. You could forgive, and depending on how terrible the betrayal is, has there been a series of betrayals, then you may just decide, I can't be in this relationship anymore, and that's okay too. But you may forgive and then move on. And there are several other misconceptions that I'd just like to briefly touch upon. You know, sometimes if you tell people that my husband is having an affair, and, you know, the women will turn around and say, what's the big deal? They'll trivialize it. Condoning is not forgiveness. You can't say it's no big deal and just let it pass. That is forgiveness. I mean, some people deal with their life in that manner and they think they've forgiven their husband for it. But it starts creating cracks in the relationship if you're merely brushing it under the carpet. It also doesn't mean that you can forget about the incident and just say, okay, men tend to behave this way, it's a man thing, and just
rationalizing it.
A lot of the patriarchy-driven elderly women may also come and suggest this, the grandmothers. Men do this kind of thing, and what are you making such a big issue about? And just let it pass and start anew. That is not forgiveness. Starting anew by brushing it under the carpet or by forgetting about what happened is not forgiveness either. But there are so many women who live in relationships thinking that they have forgiven the situation. Yeah. It also just does not mean that you can justify the offense and say, maybe he was drunk and he wasn't in his senses when he did that. Or what could he do? The woman was throwing herself at him and she seduced him, and so he couldn't control his impulses, because that's the way men are built. That is not forgiveness. Justification is not forgiveness either. So it's very important to understand all of these factors. And another aspect, which is it can't be excused. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that your husband is straight and he should not be punished for it. Or somebody commits any offense. We're just taking
Example of
the
this.
example of, an extramarital affair, but it could be any offense. It doesn't mean that the offense can be either justified or excused or condoned or forgotten or brushed under the carpet, or that you should reconcile. No, none of these issues. It simply, forgiveness means, how do I feel in here when I recall that event? Have I made peace with myself? Am I willing to engage with this person
Right.
without feeling a storm inside of your heart,
Hmm. Hmm.
without feeling completely shattered and disturbed? Some people may even put on a pretense of being composed, but they can come back and they can fall sick after they've
Yeah.
encountered an offender if the offense is serious.
Hmm.
So there could be many of these misconceptions that I think are very important for us to understand. And these are partly the reasons why people hold on to forgiveness. Because
Right.
they actually think that if I forgive this person, then he is going to think I'm weak and
Yeah.
I am not standing up for myself, and that it's okay for him to keep hurting me.
Right. Forgiveness is more about the person forgiving instead of the person who is being forgiven. And why is it so important for a person to forgive? Because often our ego stands in the way and say, but what about me? It likes to hold on to the pain. Why is it so important for us to forgive?
It is important for us to forgive because when we don't forgive, then the first great impact it has is on our own health. It has
Right.
an impact on physical health. And we've seen that people who are more unforgiving are more liable to cardiac arrests, to heart attacks. They are likely to have more cancers. They are subjected to undiagnosed aches and pains like the fibromyalgias, which today actually have no cures. And they tend to have higher blood pressure. There are also
Hmm.
several mental issues that you could have a lot more depression. You could be very, very ruminative, where you have this obsessive need to go into negative thinking, and it just keeps looping in your head, and you can't help but think negative all the time or think about that offense all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there are emotional issues where we find that all of these negative emotions, they make us extremely sad and grieving and bitter and antagonistic and hostile in our behavior. So we are not able to socially connect back with people. Our relationships become more untrusting. We're not able to enjoy our relationships or to build social equations as well because we don't trust the world. We keep thinking that they are going to hurt me again.
Hmm.
And it becomes like a blanket rule where the feeling is the whole world is my enemy. Everybody is coming to attack me.
Right.
So it's very important that we choose forgiveness because not only does it open the doorways into the heart, it also allows our innocence to return.
Hmm.
And it raises hope, it develops compassion, it heightens your own self-confidence, and of course, it boosts immunity.
Right.
There is another aspect, which is that a lot of times people have, they put conditions to their forgiveness, and that
Hmm.
delays the process of forgiving and keeps them hurting for a very long period of time. One of these things is very commonly I find when there is no closure,
Hmm.
then the person is unable to forgive, saying, but I don't know what happened. It's like reading a novel and not having the last page. And because I've not read the last page and I don't know how the story ended or why he or she did what they did to me. In my clinical practice, I find people for 25 years are not able to close chapters because they don't know why a certain man vanished on them, why he dropped me, why he
Right.
dumped me and went off with someone else. They don't have closure, and therefore, why becomes the condition. Only when I find out why so and so did this to me will I be able to give them. And why may be an answer that you'll never find in your life. So, are you going to be miserable for the rest of your life? I mean, that's a
Right.
personal choice you to make.
Yeah.
And there are other times when you can say that, okay, I will forgive only after justice is served. And there is a third aspect where people think that let's forgive him so and so because it's a social thing. I have to meet this person repeatedly because it could be a relative that you need to forgive.
Yeah.
And because I have to encounter them repeatedly, for everybody else's sake, for social harmony, for familial harmony, let me forgive this person. Okay, forgiveness is not complete because they will come back after, they put on this strong face, they come back and then they feel very woeful about that interaction, or they want to avoid going to that party and make an excuse of some illness or something else. So that is also not forgiveness. If you've done it under social pressure, or if you've done it under some religious pressure, because there is a belief that being unforgiving is a sin, and therefore I am forgiving because I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
Some people actually have that belief, and
Right.
that's not forgiveness either, because you are fooling your own mind. You're not
Yeah.
addressing your hurt. You're not dealing with your pain. You don't have this peace within, which is why, if there is one word to describe what forgiveness is, it is peace about something that you wish had never happened to you.
Hmm. So I think from all these examples, what we see is that most of the examples of forgiveness that we see around are basically people consciously convincing themselves that they have forgiven, but the forgiveness doesn't really happen because they don't process and heal themselves from whatever hurt them. Thank you so much, Suzy, for shedding light on all the misconceptions that people have about this word. If you have any more questions or situations where you have struggled to forgive somebody, please write them down in the comments section. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.